All right, welcome back to my very hot CRX. Where we left off, I replaced the fuel pump and the fuel sender, and when I went to crank it over, lost power to the fuel pump. For some reason, now the whole system is grounded. I have continuity from power to ground on key on. I've been kind of going through the harness, trying to narrow down where that short is. I think I have a pretty good idea.
You sure about that?
The previous owner of this car did some sort of a wire tuck. I'm interested in seeing if where they pass through the fender, if there may have been some chafing of the wires. This car did have a stereo system, I believe. I'm also going to check the hatch for power to an old subwoofer or something that might be just dangling down there. So let's get to it. All right, so while I'm searching here in the hatch, see if there's any wiring that's grounding out, I did order replacement struts for the hatch. So these ones are completely shot. That'll just make digging around in there a little bit easier. The previous owner was kind enough to include what looks like an old curtain rod to hold this thing for the time being. Doesn't give me much room to play with, but it's something.
That's what she said.
All right, first remove this back one. Took me a little while because I find out that it is a 11 millimeter, so I had to go hunting around for that. All right, one side's removed. Side number 2, out with the old. These little plastic retainers, I guess don't need them in the new strut. Reuse the old hardware. I think I'll need to raise the hatch to do this one. These struts are way stronger. Let's raise you up. Had to lift the hatch to get this part on because this new strut is a lot stronger than the old one. Just with this one, it holds up on its own. Now to work on the other side. Take what I learned from the last side and use this wrench to pop this side off first. Got ahead of myself a little bit. Forgot to grab the other side strut. Got exciting. All right, and just like that, stays open on its own now. What do you think? We've reached an official turning point in the video where I actually do something to improve this car, so that's pretty exciting.
A great success.
All right, we do have a rear strut bar, and note to self, I think this fire extinguisher needs to be replaced. Also, verify there's no wiring down here. It looks like some of that fire extinguisher may have gone off in here. No wiring back here for a subwoofer, so that eliminates that possible area. All right, you see I'm sweating. It is very hot in this garage, but it is also very windy, so if I open it up, all you'll hear is wind noise. I'm suffering. But on a brighter note, past week, I did finally receive my plates and my registration for this car, so a little bit more motivation to get this thing running and driving legally. All right, back inside the car, I'll show you what I'm looking at. So I have one lead on the terminal to this main fuse panel to my multimeter, the other end to ground to the cigarette lighter here. When I key on, I get continuity between the power and the ground. All right, well, I've been chasing down some wiring. I might go ahead and order the relay conversion. If that doesn't fix the problem, it'll future-proof and make that easier down the road. If you're watching and running into a similar issue, or you fixed something like this on your car, feel free to comment and let me know. I'm not an expert in this platform, so I'm here to learn, and if one of you out there has something they can help with, it'd be appreciated. All right, a little bit of time has passed since that last clip. Since then, I've learned a little bit about DC systems and also upgraded my camera. So you may notice a little bit higher video quality now. I was filming with the Insta360 and I just felt some limitations in more of the vlog style and setting up. So now I have a Sony ZV-1F to learn how to use this thing, and hopefully I just keep improving with the quality. Since that last clip, and I left off trying to find what I thought was a short to ground. After talking with a longtime friend of mine at Heavy Hitters Motorsports, I realized that the real problem is my lack of knowledge in DC systems. So from what I'm understanding, unlike an AC system, like your house wiring, a short to ground is not something that's supposed to happen. But in a DC system, from what I understand, on key on, all your system is grounded to complete that circuit. So what I thought was a short to ground was a normal circumstance. Knowing that now, realizing I was chasing the wrong problem. After looking through wiring schematics, I find the fuse that controls the fuel relay, and that was blown. After replacing the fuse, it would immediately blow again. Also, with that conversation with my buddy at Heavy Hitters, he directed me to look at the fuel return line, because showing that I'm getting a high fuel pressure, there's nowhere for that fuel pressure to go. So there may be a clog in the fuel return line, which is causing that fuse to blow. So today I'll be bypassing that fuel return line to isolate the high pressure issue and also adjust the fuel pressure regulator if needed. All right, so here is the current state of the inside here. To my defense, if you got inside and saw wiring like this, wiring like this, sorry, I think that you would jump to a wiring fault first as well. Also, while I'm at it, I am going with this relay adapter for your generic 4-pin relay. It's a pretty common replacement to switch to on these older Hondas. Much easier to just go to the auto parts store and pick up a 4-pin than to have to order this $60+ relay from Honda. I'll be swapping this out while cleaning everything else up. And I bought this felt loom tape instead of that sticky, gooey electrical tape. Knowing that all this is probably okay for now, I'm going to get all this tucked back away and get started on the engine bay for that fuel line. Here's the update. All the wiring's tucked back in. Trim over the steering wheel back on. And if we go to the front, so here is my fuel return line, originally going there through the firewall. So now I've ran another hose to this fuel can. Now I'm just going to start it up and find out if there's a clog from the fuel return here going back to the tank. Also, I'm not sure if I shared this already. The OEM circuit for the fuel pump here is a 10 amp. It was blowing that 10 amp fuse every time I'd go to prime the pump. Looking at the specs of the Walbro 255 pump, at 70 psi, it pulls just over 10 amps. I replaced the fuse for now with a 15 amp pump primes and doesn't blow the fuse, so I know it's pulling somewhere between 10 and 15 amps. But we're still having issues with that high psi at the regulator. Want to isolate whether the regulator isn't adjusted properly or if there's a blockage in the return line somewhere. All right, gonna reconnect the battery. All right, everything should be connected the way it was, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to start it. Alright, after starting it and trying to let it run, I didn't see any fuel passing its way back into the tank through the return line. Looking at the pressure gauge while it was running, it was still all the way pegged past 100 psi. That makes me believe that there is a blockage somewhere in the fuel rail and the pressure regulator. I'm going to remove the pressure regulator. I already have the fuel pressure bled off, so it's not gonna spray into my eyes. I'll remove this, see if I see any blockage in there, and go from there. All right, this regulator has 4 T10 bolts on it, so I'm going to try to break these free by hand. Hopefully they don't strip out and the gasket behind it doesn't get ruined. They seem to be breaking free pretty easily. Whoa, guess I didn't get all the fuel bled out of it. And that's why you always wear eye protection. Tuck these in underneath just to catch any more residual. When removing any bolts, it's always best to keep a tray nearby. I like these little magnetic trays, especially when the screws are actually magnetic. All right, there's gonna be a spring inside here. You don't wanna lose that. And this gasket, all this still looks okay.
You sure about that?
If I can find a replacement for it, I'll probably order that. All right, now that that's removed, I might remove the whole assembly now. All right, now the entire fuel rolls out. Got a little more room to work on this thing, so there's just 2 4mm bolts holding the regulator assembly on. Now that I have this system apart, I better understand how it's supposed to work. You have this diaphragm right here, and this mating surface seals against this end of the regulator. You have this spring that keeps that seal closed, and this bolt will adjust the tension on this spring. And as pressure builds up on this side of the diaphragm, it will compress this spring and allow the fuel to pass through to your fuel tank return line. After looking at all this, everything looks pretty clean. The only thing I can think of is, as that old fuel pump was going bad, they kept turning up the pressure on this regulator to compensate for the failure of that old pump. And now that the new pump's in, this thing's way out of adjustment. Now that I see that there's no clogs, I'm gonna assemble this all back together, back off this adjustment screw, and see if that makes any difference. If not, my other assumption is that this diaphragm could be going bad and allowing fuel to pass through this material, not allowing it to build enough pressure for it to open and relieve the fuel system. Let's get it all back together and see if we can adjust it. All right, so after trying to start it again, it was still pegged at 100 psi, but it's slightly leaking out of here. So that leads me to believe that diaphragm inside here, especially now that it's passing through that seal, that part needs to be replaced before this regulator can work properly. So I'm going to look online, see if I can find this replacement diaphragm and get it installed. All right, with that said, I'm gonna have to wait for some parts to arrive to continue on this. For this video, this is where I'm gonna wrap it up. I think I made some progress in the right direction and getting close here to getting this thing run properly. Once I get it to run and idle, I'll be taking it to my buddy at Heavy Hitters Motorsports and get this thing street tuned. Make sure everything's running the way it's supposed to, and I'm not gonna blow this thing up. I wanna thank you for watching. If you have any comments, leave it down below. See you on the next one. Thanks.